A very good morning to one and all present over here. I, Vishal Patnaik,
And I, Mansi Chopra,
welcome you all to the inaugural session of the International Conference on Organization Metamorphosis for Innovation, Inclusion and Agility. On behalf of Xavier School of Human Resource Management, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar, we extend a very warm welcome to one and all present over here, our esteemed dignitaries, faculty members, distinguished guests, delegates, and our fellow students.
D. Hawk, founder of Visa Credit Card, said, "An organization, no matter how well designed, is only as good as the people who live and work in it." This really draws light to the fact that an organization is nothing but a living organism with an ever-changing labyrinth made up of discrete and unique individuals that make up its workforce. And that is what seems to be the major concern of most corporate giants in this era of fourth industrial revolution.
We are privileged to have amongst us eminent industry experts, stalwarts from diverse backgrounds who would throw light on specifics of the same. So without further ado, I would request all the dignitaries to take their place on the podium.
It is our honor to have with us Professor Dr. Aru Parma, Professor, Queensland School of Business, Loyola University, Chicago, our chief guest and keynote speaker. We also have Father Dr. Paul Fernandez, Vice Chancellor, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar, and Director, XIMB. Professor Snigdha Patnaik, Dean, Xavier School of Human Resource Management, and Professor Sanket Sunandash, Assistant Professor, Xavier School of Human Resource Management. I would now request all the student volunteers to present the dignitaries a sapling as a token of our gratitude, everlasting association, and sustainability.
We now request the dignitaries on stage to formally inaugurate the conference by lighting the lamp. I request all of them to please stand up. In keeping with the ancient Indian tradition, we begin with a prayer invoking divine presence amongst us. I request our fellow students to begin by chanting the invocation.
शक्ति देना मन विजय करे, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करे। हमको मन की शक्ति देना, भेद भाव अपना मन दिल से साफ कर सके, दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके, झूठ से बचे रहे सच का दम भरे, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद को जय करे, हमको मन की शक्ति देना।
Thank you.
We now request Professor Snigdha Patnaik, Dean, Xavier School of Human Resource Management, to welcome and address the gathering.
Please, ma'am.
Respected Professor Dr. Father Paul Fernandez, Vice Chancellor, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar, and Director, XIMB, Professor Aru Parma, Professor, Quinlan School of Business, Loyola University, Chicago, Professor Sanket Sunandas, Assistant Professor, Xavier School of Human Resource Management, esteemed speakers, distinguished guests, delegates, my faculty colleagues, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everyone. On behalf of the Xavier School of Human Resource Management, Xavier University, Bhubaneswar, it is my proud privilege to welcome you to the International Conference on Organizational Metamorphosis for Innovation, Inclusion, and Agility. We are honored that all of you have joined us at this conference that our school, Xahr, is holding. I'm privileged to welcome Professor Aru Parma as our chief guest and keynote speaker for the conference. We are deeply appreciative and grateful that you accepted our invitation, are honored to welcome you to the conference, and look forward to your keynote address. I'm happy to welcome our esteemed speakers who have come up from across the country and will share their thoughts, views, and experiences with us. Each one is a renowned and respected authority in the field of HR. We are fortunate that you have spared the time to be with us and look forward to hearing you during the deliberations. I welcome all the guests and delegates who are here for the conference. It is your presence that gives life to any conference, and I trust that it will be a meaningful and enriching experience for you. I welcome my faculty colleagues for joining us today. Without your support and encouragement and ideas, none of this would be possible, and I'm very happy to see you all here. I'm delighted to welcome all the students who are here. This is a unique experience for you, to listen to deliberations on a live issue from across multiple stakeholders. I wish you a wonderful and exciting learning journey. Today, we are in the midst of technological, societal, political, and legal changes that pose multifarious challenges for people managers as they try to attract, retain, and engage people. As organizations grapple with this and fight to remain competitive and forge ahead, they have to continually experiment and reinvent themselves. The old and the new have to coexist in ever-changing patterns. Organizations grapple with respect to how do we innovate with internal processes and external products? How do we connect with our stakeholders in various ways? How do we increase the diversity of our workforce? And then what do we do about the challenges that happen as a consequence? Thinking about all of these issues, we came up with the theme for this conference, which is organizational metamorphosis for innovation, inclusion, and agility, because all these three are very, very important, vital for organizations today. So we have three major themes: innovations in HR, organizational metamorphosis for inclusion, and organizational metamorphosis for agility. As you can see from the schedule, we have plenary sessions, panel discussions, and paper presentations around the three themes. To bring in as many diverse perspectives as we could and to enrich the conversations, we also tried our best to have a diverse group of speakers who will share their views, discuss, and debate advances in systems, processes, and practices in managing people. So we have we bring together 15 eminent persons from across 6 different industrial sectors and from academia. We have 2 international speakers and 13 speakers from within the country, 7 from outside Bhubaneswar and 6 people who are local. We also invited papers, scholarly research papers for the conference and received 21 papers from across various institutes and universities in India, some of them being Wellinkar Institute of Management, Mumbai, Sri Sri University, D.Y. Patil University, Navi Mumbai, IMIS Bhubaneswar, Department of Business Administration, Berhampur University, and of course our own research scholars from Xavier University, among others. These papers went through a peer review process, and 12 scholarly papers have been selected for presentation tomorrow in the morning. Yesterday, we had a very interesting pre-conference workshop that was conducted by Professor Aru Parma on diversity and inclusion, bridging the library boardroom divide. And I'm happy to share that the feedback that we've gotten from the participants has been really, really wonderful. They were very, very happy, found it a great experience. We have tried to put together an interesting mix of ideas and perspectives for you. We look forward to 2 days of enriching ideas and views, interesting debates, multiple perspectives, and a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Signa ma'am, for those enriching words. We would like to now invite Dr. Father Paul Fernandez, Vice Chancellor, Xavier University, and Director, XIMB, to please address the gathering and express his thoughts. Please, Father.
Very good morning to all of you. I think Snigdha deserves a much big applause as she leads the school, and thank you very much. Sometimes we work together, and there are faculty colleagues and strategic advisory board members. Let me first then cordial welcome to all, and especially to Dr. Aru. Thank you for coming all the way from Chicago and giving us and the distinguished guests cordial welcome. And we would be delighted to listen to your thoughts on this issue of metamorphosis. First of all, what you see in this campus, for the benefit of those who are coming for the first time, is about a development of 5.5 years, if you see the campus as a whole, and academically about 5 years, going to be 5 years, not yet 5 years. And when you see a change right here, you begin to wonder what we can achieve in a short span of 5 years. You can take that cue from here to apply to your topic and ask yourself, what does this big word called metamorphosis mean for an organization? Are you aware of different stages of change that happen in an organization? So metamorphosis, first of all, is not the early stage of an organization. Okay? Not as 5 years, not as 10 years, not as 20 years, not as 30 years. It's not the earlier stages of the change or development or path of an organization. It's about an organization that has passed the maturity stage and is probably on the other side. It's the later stage of change, transformation, evolution of an organization. It's about creating a new self-image for the organization in a short way. A short description would be creating a new self-image for the organization. Relooking at its fundamental beliefs and fundamental freedoms and fundamental rights around which human beings live in that organization and work and through it contribute to society and also for their own future and build their own future and their own lives. If this is the kind of thinking that we would like to have, then ask yourself what extent these other three words contribute to creating a new self-image for the organization. You have the word called innovation. It's widely been thrown around. Okay? You know about innovation, right? Everybody thinks it's about coming up with a new idea, right? Yeah? It is not. Okay? That's probably the smallest part of innovation. It is not. Okay? If you see the organization journey, the early part has got a lot of beliefs, and some of them are constraints as you move on in the future. There are limitations in the journey. Some people call it legacy problem. There isn't a legacy problem. That's a nice way of blaming the previous guys, okay? All right. You have heard about 4.0, okay, organization that was referred to here, Industry 4.0, okay? All right? And they're talking about AI, and so Industry 5.0 is not very far behind, and you're looking forward to Organization 5.0. So change is on the way in a bigger way. You're not going to have a big number of people. You're going to have less number of people. There will be a lot of them jobless. And maybe some of you, unless you keep up with the current trends, may also find yourself on the other side. Okay, it's possible, okay? And having said that, organizations are people, and people don't have 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0 stamped on it. Do you? Would you accept such a thing? No. So there's no 4.0 organization in the strict sense when organizations are filled with people. Okay? And if you want from me just a clue, I leave it to the persons who will enlighten you. We believe that human beings have a soul. Okay? And what does that soul mean? It means human beings are knowing beings. They're also loving beings. These are the faculties that we have, and there are many more. Just to name, I just mentioned 2. So don't go by one kind of psychology that is popularized, starting with that word called Eid. You're aware of that word? Yes? You have heard of this word called Eid? Yeah. Okay. What is it? Okay. Whatever it is, okay. We all know it. We don't want to say it, but psychoanalytics gives you the word called Eid, and everything is structured on that basis. You have another source within you, what we call inspiration, the positive energy, the breath, what we sometimes use the word breath, the living breath. Human beings in organizations are living. There's another which is from inside, is inspiring you day in, day out. Only question is, are you listening? Are you listening, okay? To what is being said from within when you are working. While working, all your attention is drawn to so many other things, and you do not create a space for yourself. And first of all, therefore, if you want to think of metamorphosis in an organization, think of as people, and think of creating a space for yourself where you can really think, you can also love the things that you really want to love and commit yourself to realizing those things that you love. There's a lot of power within you. Okay? And metamorphosis, otherwise, if you follow the journey of it, will end up in death. And that's why this word called culture of death that is being spoken around. Okay? So, towards which are you headed? Towards death or towards living? Living. So think of the inspiration within you. Think of the power within you to bring about the good. Okay? And think about the metamorphosis that all of us go through in our later stages of life. Okay? Trying to find the purpose and the meaning that we lost because we put on ourselves limitations and constraints and so on. So remove those, create an open space, even in the organization, and you can see the organizations will flourish. Of course, there are plenty of organizations, all kinds of organizations, and all kinds of changes are happening. Find out that which is meaningful for you. I wish you the very best. Enjoy the conference, enjoy listening to the speakers, and get enlightened. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Father Paul Fernandez. We now request the chief guest, Dr. Aru Parma, to deliver the keynote address. Dr. Aru Parma is presently serving as a professor at Loyola University, Chicago. Professor Verma has completed his master's in personnel management and industrial relations from Xahr, Jamshedpur, and holds a doctorate degree in industrial relations and human resources from Rutgers University, New Jersey. He has published over 50 articles in leading referred journals such as the Academy of Management Journal, Personnel Psychology, the Journal of Applied Psychology, and the International Journal of Human Resource Management. He has also presented over 90 research papers at leading international conferences and authored 35 book chapters on diverse themes. We welcome you, sir, to address the gathering.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and let me start by thanking a few people that absolutely deserve to be thanked. So first of all, Father Paul Fernandez, thank you. I've known Father for over 30 years, and it's a pleasure to see what's happening at XIM Bhubaneswar. I was a student at XLRI in the 80s when the conversations about starting a program or a school in Bhubaneswar started. And I remember Professor C.G.K. Nair was one of the first who came to Bhubaneswar. Of course, later on Father Abraham and Father McGrath. And we kept thinking as a student, someday we'll go there and guest lecture. It didn't happen for 35 years, but finally I am here. Dean Snigdha Patanayak, thank you very much. Obviously a senior from XLRI, and we have a very good common friend who makes it a point to tell me every time, if you go there, please say hi to Snigdha. Dr. Dash, thank you very much again for having me here, and a few people in the audience. Dr. Akhil Busrai, who many of you or all of you will meet, is also a senior from XLRI, so I have to recognize him. It's good to see you again, sir. Professor Paul Hempel, he and I did our PhD together, so we met 28 years ago when we both joined Rutgers University. Neither he nor I could have predicted that 28 or 29 years later we'll be sitting at XIM Bhubaneswar and serving as panelists. I'm sorry, XUB, yes, XUB, that's bigger than XIM, yes. I'm going to blame it on jet lag. I've been on the ground for less than 48 hours. And finally, Ramakant Tallapragada, some of you know him, he's sitting there. He's a student here, a proud student, but he was also a student in Chicago for 1 year. He did his MSHR at Loyola Chicago, and he was my graduate assistant. So he's been a good host for the last 2 days. And I've told him to extend his stay here because I'm coming back in July for the Jesuit Business Conference. So he said, I'll be graduating, Professor. I said, don't worry, I know people, your grades will be changed. You will be here. So don't worry about that. Okay, so with that, when I saw the topic, I realized this is way over my head. I mean, it's big words, organizational metamorphosis, and then there's innovation, inclusion, and agility. There are experts on all of these subjects in the room who will serve on panels, who will speak on these subjects. So I'm going to give more of a 30,000-foot overview. I don't claim to be an expert on any of these subjects. I don't claim to be an expert on anything, other than keeping you occupied for the next 35 minutes. Somehow or the other, that will happen. So, when I first saw the topic, I said, okay, immediately thought of Franz Kafka and Metamorphosis. Some of you may be familiar with that. The younger crowd, Google, not right now, not in class, but Google later, and you know, he talks about the cockroach. So I thought this is a very apt metaphor for what some people do in organizations. Those are the ones that survive. You know, they say that if there was nuclear holocaust, the only living being or organism that would survive would be cockroaches. In many organizations, everybody else gets pushed out. The only people who survive are what we call cucaracha. But that's another topic for another day. So let's get to the topic at hand. First of all, really, congratulations to XUB, to Father and Father's team for what they have done here. It is incredible. And especially the time period. That's incredible. There's a lot of growth, change, metamorphosis that has happened at XLRI. We have seen that over the years, and it's gone from a cute institute to a great institute, still maintaining its essence and the feeling that we get when we go back to campus. I'm sure all of you will have the same feeling here. I started XLRI 1982, 37 years ago. For some of you, like 37, that's like my dad's age. Close enough. Well, 37 years later, some of you should be here in this building or one of the buildings here giving back. So that's very important. It's not just about taking from. And given that we are a Jesuit institute, and I'm a product of Jesuit schools all my life, barring my PhD, from first grade through my master's, and then teaching in a Jesuit school for the last 24 years. There's something about it which is almost a je ne sais quoi. You can't put your finger on it, but keeps bringing you back. So the most important lesson, because you are all sitting where I sat 37 years ago, not literally, you have to give back, and you will get an opportunity. And when that comes along, when you're the CEO or CIO or what have you, don't forget where we came from. So that's the lesson number one. In terms of the topic itself, it's really a very critical topic, and it's a topic that now becomes outdated because change is the only constant, to use a cliche. We know that. The question is not whether we will accept change or whether we will reject change, it's how we will react to it. Because if I don't accept it, that doesn't mean change will go away. It's going to happen. So I, for a long time, was very resistant when cell phones first came along. A lot of people were buying cell phones, and I didn't buy one. So people would say, I flew to New Jersey to do some training, and one of my friends said, I'll come pick you up. What's your number? So what number? So cell number. So no, there's payphones. I'll call you from the payphone. There's three terminals, A, B, and C in Newark. He came to one terminal, I went to another one. I called his wife at his house. She called him back on his cell because I didn't have a cell phone. Because I refused to get with the program. And my logic used to be, which I thought was very cute at that point, why do I need a cell phone? Who's calling a professor? Sir, what's my grade? No, I don't need a phone. Then I soon realized I have a choice. I can either get with the program or get left behind. The change is not going to stop for me because I have decided that I don't want to change. We all do that, different things. No, I'm fine the way things are. I don't need to change. Organizations do the same thing, a lot of organizations. In the old days, we used to say in the United States and Texas, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Leave it as it is. Well, those things don't really work. Even if it ain't broke, every now and then check to make sure it ain't broke. Fix it. Maybe you can do something, maybe tweak a little bit. When Father described the whole process of metamorphosis and this different stage of organization, it's good to stop and check. And Dean Patnaik talked about reinventing ourselves, reinventing organizations, reinventing people. So if things do go wrong, both organizations and individuals can correct course and reinvent. It's not the end of the word. Let's take a few examples. These are companies some of you may have heard of. I'm going to start in the 50s and come all the way to the present. Global companies that at one point were considered great companies. Pan American Airways, Pan Am. And the 50s these are all the companies that trainers like us used to then talk about, go around talking about Pan Am. In the 60s, there was RCA. In the 70s, we had Digital DEC, or in India, it was Digital Equipment Corporation. Wang Computers. How many people in this room would have heard of Wang Computers? But it was very, very popular at one point. In the 80s, there was Atari, Tandy. There's one company that was there then and that is back again, which I'll leave aside for a moment, Apple. But Atari and Tandy, where are they today? In the 90s, we had Enron, MCI, WorldCom. These were all global companies. These were the companies consultants were talking about, making lots of money, putting them up there as best practices, companies to look for, companies to be like. Along in the 2000s, not that long ago, Lehman Brothers. I hope you've heard of Lehman Brothers. Now we're getting into a period where you might have heard because they went up and down. Northwest Airlines. And then lately, Blockbuster, Wells Fargo Bank. And the list goes on and on and on. All of these were considered great companies at one point. What happened to them? What happened to them? They failed to get with the program, one way or another. It's not one simple factor, the whole bunch of factors. But if you look into it, almost every single, if not every single one, primarily failed or suffered because of people, not because of systems, not because of processes. They may not have adapted to the new system, they may not have adapted to the new processes, but that decision to adapt was made by a human being, or the decision not to adapt. No, we're doing fine, we don't need this, we can do this fine. What is wrong with dot matrix printers? Why do we need laser printers? What is wrong with the way we've been doing balance sheets? When I finished my degree/diploma at XLRI, we were warned not to say degree, and people in the family would say, "Arey, degree nahi mila, diploma hai, shaadi nahi hoga." Truth is, abhi tak shaadi nahi hua, so I blame it on XLRI diploma. If I'd gotten a degree, I would have had one, but that's another story again for another time. But I joined a pharmaceutical company in New Delhi. I was in the factory, and my job as personnel officer was to approve leave applications. And there were hundreds, I don't know the exact number, but a few hundred workers in 3 shifts, so a total of about 2,500. And every day you'd get a bunch. Privilege leave was pink, casual leave was green, and there was one more, sick leave was yellow, I think. Sick leave yellow, that I think somebody put their brain together, said yellow looks sick, so we'll put it together. And there were 3 copies. I would have to open the register, look if the individual had his or her leave available to him, approve it, then it would go to my boss, the personnel manager, Mr. Seth, great mentor. And then we'd give a copy to the employee. And of course, people would constantly come in. Saab, chutti nahi hai, badha do. Jana hai, bahut zaruri kaam hai. Please extend. Sir, I don't have the authority, you only have so many. साफ कर दो, कौन देखेगा? Register आप ही तो खोलता है, और तो कोई खोलता नहीं है. Nobody is doing that today, that way, I hope. I'm sure there are some companies still doing that, but that's a different matter. And today, in a lot of organizations I've seen in India right here, employees can access their own portal, go onto a workstation in the factory, in the office, they control everything. In many companies, it's on their phone, they can access everything through their own phones. Things have changed. Many resisted, many moved along. If we are going to adapt and thrive, so not just survive, but thrive, we have to change. We have to allow the change to happen, but we can lead that change or we can be led by change. The proactive organizations are going to lead by change. I'll give you a small example. Singapore is a very small country. Some of you may have visited or heard about it or sang songs about it. Raj Kapoor used to sing in the old days, Singapore, Singapore. Some of you are saying, who's Raj Kapoor? Come on now. Karishma Kapoor's grandfather. Now you know who I'm talking about. So, Singapore is a very small country. It was all swamp. Nothing grows there. And they were kicked out of the Malaysian Federation in the 60s. They were a part of Malaysia. They were kicked out, literally. And Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, who was the leader, there was a lot of politics as to why they were kicked out, but he said, no problem. And one of the things he said was, I'm going to make this like Colombo. That was his dream, to make, he's written about it in his autobiography, I'm going to make Singapore like Colombo. I was in Colombo last year. Colombo is very nice, but Singapore has gone way, way past. Among the things they did was, he said, they used to have Malaysia-Singapore airline, joint airline. And he said, we'll break away. At some point, they broke away in the 70s and said, we'll form our own airline, Singapore Airlines. And people laughed. People said, you have a small country. Singapore is all of 200 square miles. That's it. Now it's about 220 because they keep reclaiming land. And at that point, it was about 170, 180 square miles. It's really small. I said, why would you need an airline? What are you going to do? Where are you going to fly? You can just use Malaysian Airlines. Said, no, I'm going to create a world-class airline. Okay, how are you going to create a world-class airline? So one of the things that US has an advantage over other countries is that we have a huge consumer base. So a lot of products we produce, we can consume ourselves. Singapore, if you have 1.92 million people at that point, you're not going to use it. He says, no, I'm going to create an airline that everybody else is going to want to use. Let me tell you how small Singapore is. Singapore Airlines has no domestic flights. When Singapore Airlines takes off from Changi Airport, the moment it reaches cruising altitude, it has already left the country. So you cannot have domestic flights. That's just it. And yet, they are one of the world's best airlines. And they keep reinventing themselves. They keep reinventing themselves. How do they do that? I'll give you a specific example in a second. But let me tell you, last week I was in Houston, Texas. In the 90s, when I first moved to the US, Houston used to have scheduled flights within the city. Houston has two airports, Houston Intercontinental, Houston Hobby. You could buy a ticket and fly from one airport to the other airport in the same city. You didn't want to drive. It was 70, 75, 80 miles one end to the other. You could fly. Singapore is a country and doesn't have domestic flights. So sometimes you think things are different. The scale is different. How does Singapore Airlines reinvent itself? I attended one of their training programs, which is one of the best training programs for hospitality anywhere in the world. It's actually used by a lot of airlines, by a lot of hotels, quietly because they don't want to acknowledge. So if you see a Singapore Airlines advertisement in any magazine, and look it up later, they call their flight attendants the Singapore girl. Most of them are female, and that's okay because their laws allow them to use that language. In the US, they would have to say the Singapore person. You can't say girl or man or boy. But nonetheless, look at their smile. Look at their smile. Every single one of them has the same smile. Let me back up and explain why that happened. So what Singapore Airlines does, which most organizations should do, is constantly ask, how are we doing? Rather than say, we're doing fine. That's it. We can rest on our laurels. We're doing fine. We are great. Instead, we can say, how are we doing? And let's not ask our VPs, our senior VPs, our employees, because they are biased. They are going to say we're doing well because they are doing it. Let's ask the customer. So every few months, Singapore Airlines, they use consultants to do this, and that's good because consultants need to make money, and it's good. They bring in customers, put them in a focus group, feed them, ply them with good amounts of whatever they want to drink, and ask them, talk to us. So this is about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. One such group was there, and they're asking, how are we doing? And they kept saying, fine, fine, great, you're the best, you're the best. Anytime you ask people about Singapore Airlines, if anybody here has flown, nobody's going to say, I've had a horrible experience. And if it does, it's probably that off day. I've not yet heard anybody had a horrible experience with Singapore Airlines. Not that it won't happen, because we know statistics, we know 99.9% confidence and all that good stuff. So they kept asking. Now, before I tell you what the response was, let's understand what kind of audience Singapore Airlines has. Singapore is a very small country, but the location is one of the best things it has. It's very safe. It has a very good school system. I visited Singapore the first time about 20 years ago. My sister was living there, and my sister, my brother, my brother-in-law, we were all coming back late at night, and there was a little kid sitting at a bus stop reading, waiting for a bus. This is past midnight. Past midnight, a little kid sitting by herself, reading a book, waiting for a bus. In Chicago, an adult doing that would probably get into serious trouble. Serious trouble. Very safe. So what happens is a lot of folks, especially expatriates from Europe, from North America, from other countries, who work in Vietnam, Indonesia, Cambodia, Philippines, they live in Singapore because school system is good, it's safe. They fly out every Monday morning or Sunday night to Hanoi or wherever they are working, work the whole week, come back on Friday. The family stays back. So that's the crowd that uses Singapore Airlines primarily, 25 years ago when this story that I'm telling you. And of course we have luxury travelers, people who save up all their lives and then, okay, we'll go to Asia someday. They want to fly Singapore Airlines. And the service is just incredible. And I know some of you have traveled, so you know what I'm talking about. So as they were asking, one of the gentlemen in the room, a participant in that focus group, who was a CEO of some firm, everybody's saying, yeah, you're doing fine, don't keep asking, you're doing fine, just keep doing what you're doing. And they said, no, keep talking. But here's the thing, in the airline business, there's not much you can do with the hardware. You can't say, give me an extra wing, I'll be different from others. No, there'll only be 2 wings. You can't say, I'll have extra wheels. You can't say, let's have bigger wheels, let's put hubcaps. So really, there's only so much you can do, and that Boeing or Airbus or whoever's building it will do. You can do a lot with the software. Software meaning not just computer software, but the soft things. And you can do things inside. So Singapore Airlines was one of the first to introduce television on every seat, even in economy. And even people in economy can actually choose what they watch. Not like some of the airlines, which I won't mention because we are flying them tomorrow, which have a picture where their TV should be. Even in business class, this great airline, they just have a photograph of a Maharaja there, where there should be a TV. There's no TV. I don't know what airline I was talking about, but nonetheless. So they kept asking, and of course, people were enjoying the red wine they were drinking. Ultimately, the gentleman spoke up and he said, look, I think you guys are doing really, really good. And I can't think of anything I would ask you to change because you keep doing this. So, you give hot meals in coach. Singapore Airlines actually addresses you by name in economy. I've sat in economy a few times, in the old days, not anymore. And they say, hello, Mr. Parma, what would you like to have? It's not rocket science. They've got the manifest. They just make that effort. In other airlines, they say, kya chahiye? Bas ek baar kha lo, baar mat bulao. In business class, that has happened to me in the Maharaja or some other place, I don't know where. So anyway, as he was doing this, he said, everything is fine. I do have one suggestion. As I'm stepping off the jetway onto the plane, for a split second, only a split second, I have this feeling of loss of control. In my life, I'm in control. I'm a CEO, I run my own company. At home, I'm the boss. My wife, my children, they do whatever I say. That's what he claimed. His wife wasn't there, so we're not going to argue. He said, I'm the boss everywhere. But as I'm stepping off the jetway onto the plane, for a split second, I hope the pilot knows what he's doing. I hope he's not in a bad mood. Those kinds of things. So they said, okay, but what do we do? There's no solution to that. We can't let everybody fly the plane. He said this, he said, you know what would help? A smiling face. A smiling face. And this is what led to the training. If you look at that picture of Singapore Airlines, you open up any magazine, Google Singapore Airlines, and you'll see they all have the same smile. So as part of the selection process for Singapore Airlines, they actually measure the smile. And if you don't have the right smile, you will not get the job. This is an absolute fact. They measure the smile. They'll pay for dentures. They'll help you learn how to smile. But you have to be able to smile correctly. Nobody would have thought that something like a smile would lead, but that's where. So the bottom line that they are getting started with a smile. So it can be as simple and as complex as that, but we miss it because we are too busy, too successful, or we don't have time for all of this. We are an airline industry. Who cares about smiling? I fly a lot in the United States. The airline's name is in the country itself. You fly any airline in the US domestically. When you step onto the plane, if you ever find a smiling person, please email me. They are either from Singapore Airlines, just taking a break and coming working in the US, or there's something wrong with them, tell the pilot. All they seem to be doing every time I step on is take ice and smashing it. And they make it a point not to make eye contact with the passengers walking in, because I may ask for something. You know, people in economy will say, can I put my jacket here? No, you're in economy. You put your jacket on yourself. It's only for business class people. So they make no eye contact. Singapore Airlines will address you by name. And they have not rested on their laurels. This was 25 years ago. They're coming up with the newest terminal. It'll open very soon. It's one of the best places. People want to fly to Singapore just to spend time in the terminal. I grew up in Kolkata, Calcutta. Nobody ever went up to Dum Dum. Let's go and hang out in Dum Dum. Because if they did, we'd be like, what's wrong with you, Dum Dum? Why are you hanging out in an airport? Even today, now they have a brand new swanky airport. I still don't know anybody of my friends in Kolkata saying, "Chal airport e ghure aasi." In Singapore, not only Singaporeans go there, they have food courts. People from other countries fly through Singapore just so they can spend time in Changi Airport. Because they keep reinventing themselves. So, what happened to these companies that I mentioned earlier? What was the reason for inertia? One is cognitive processes. Homophily sets in. Why we attract people who are like us? Because that gives us comfort. If I'm talking to somebody who's not like me, he's going to challenge me. He's going to say, no, I think there's another way, and I don't want that. I want people to say, hey, your way is the best way. I'm not just talking about myself. I'm like, in general, all of us. But that's not how growth happens. Growth happens when somebody who knows better or knows different can challenge. Most organizations don't do that. You hear of CEOs moving from one company to another, they take the whole team. The senior vice president, the secretary, everybody moves along. Why? The other company doesn't have vice presidents? Doesn't have secretaries? No, but I'm used to working with her and him. So get used to working with somebody new. You're the boss, you're a CEO, you're the change champion. You want to change the world, but you can't change your secretary and your vice president. So homophily sets in. That's a bad thing. We want to attract diverse people. We want to include people of and diversity is not just gender or race or religion. Yes, those are. It's everything. So in fact, we should be talking about inclusion. But inclusion makes it already seem like a supercilious thing, like I'm going to include you. I have already arrived, therefore I include you. How about don't exclude? How about we assume that everybody who's there belongs there? Just to change the way we look at it. Yesterday in the United Arab Emirates, they gave out awards, and I didn't note down the exact award. Gender Equality Awards were given out for the first time in Dubai. All the awards went to men. Gender Equality Awards, you can Google it. It happened this morning. Late last night we were talking, we saw this. Said, okay, perfect timing. All the awards went to men about helping women, coaching, everything, but apparently men did everything. So Gender Equality Awards to men. So sloganeering is one thing, internalizing it is another, and that's going to take a while. The other reason for inertia, for not change, is culture. Sab chalta hai. This is in India especially, but everywhere. It happens everywhere. Chalta hai. We are all, change the culture. The culture should be promoting